Welcome back to the PHENIX Investigations Podcast. We got one of our best guests here, Joel Weis, Senior Investigator,
How we
Asset
doing?
Search Specialist. Welcome back, Joel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again. Haven't got kicked off yet.
No permaban yet, but we'll see how you do today. So we've got a specific topic in mind that I'm excited about. Obviously, one of PHENIX and your areas of expertise, estate asset search.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is a very complicated issue. We do get a lot of calls. We get a lot of interest for this because, again, everybody has to go through this issue. A lot of people don't prepare enough for it. They either, want to hide their heads. They don't want to think about it. I mean, death is a hard topic to discuss with a lot of people. So this topic doesn't get discussed enough, in my opinion, through family members when it should, when people are of sound and capable mind to talk through it. And then a lot of people just don't know where to start either. So
just let's have the layperson conversation. What is an estate?
Yeah. So what we're talking about is, when somebody passes away, what they leave behind. So it's going to be all of the physical assets, the liquid assets, businesses, anything that needs to be moved or transferred to somebody else.
So I always do this. I go back to movies and TV shows. What typically happens when someone passes away, there is a dramatic scene where a lawyer in an expensive office has one document. It is a will. They read the will, and that seamlessly passes the deceased belongings and businesses to their family members. That is not reality. How does it actually work?
Yeah, so I mean, there is some truth to that. I mean, there definitely are people who have it laid out to where they have people come together and you have a will reading, but not everybody is ready to pass away and have everything set up in that regard, and that's where a lot of what we do comes in. People call us for people who pass away suddenly, pass away at a young age. And then we have the other side that gets even more emotional, to where family members take advantage of people in bad mental states or start to steal and take stuff from their siblings that their parents left to them. Jealousy, all of those things come into play.
So I think most people listening can relate to, either in their family or an adjacent family, someone that's passed away, and there's been a ripple effect of negativity, infighting, squabbling over belongings in the family. How does PHENIX Investigation get engaged in that scenario?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically, we get calls from both sides. So we either get calls from the trustee of the estate, and they say, hey, I feel like a family member, a sibling, or somebody close to the person who passed away, started stealing stuff, started to take stuff that wasn't theirs. And then we get the opposite of the sibling who wasn't the trustee. And they're like, hey, I think the trustee, my sister, my brother, my uncle, if there's still some older living relative, and they squandered the estate. They told us that there was nothing. We were promised, golds and riches from my mother and father our entire lives, and we got nothing. So there's typically tons of unanswered questions to that degree. And they either have specific lists of, hey, this is what I expected, and we don't know where it went, or we have no clue, and we need to know what's all out there, or what happened to the stuff.
So the trustee, to make sure that I'm on the same page, is the person that has been granted legal ownership or access to the estate?
Yeah. So when you set up your estate, your will, you will list either the person who is in charge of your estate, and either that person can be inheriting everything. They could be an attorney who you give direction on where they're supposed to move all this stuff to. Typically it's usually, like I said, an uncle, brother, sister of the decedent, or the next kind of heir. The oldest child usually takes on that responsibility, and they either may inherit some of it and then distribute it, the rest of the assets to the rest of the family.
Okay, so a lot of times Phoenix is called when a family member or somebody that was felt they were entitled to something feels the trustee misappropriated elements of the estate or the entire estate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's definitely one side of it. The other side that gets even more convoluted, in my opinion, and what makes it even harder, is if there's claims of manipulation of either a new will, a manipulation of a new trust, or movement of assets leading up to the decedent passing away. Were they in sound mind when they signed over their $1 million business to the kid who was really getting nothing? All of a sudden, one or two of the kids have everything paid off in bill wise, and then mom has nothing in her checking account once they actually looked. So we have to go through, and that actually happens outside of the family as well. So we've seen, medical care professionals take advantage of people, have new wills that just got signed a week before the person died. And, there's a whole convoluted portion of that that goes along with not only just siblings coming to us as well.
Yeah, I have seen horror dramas where a medical professional takes ownership of a person's estate as
Yeah.
sort of a long-running rotational scam. Say you're the first person I talk to at Phoenix about this situation, this convoluted example where I feel I'm owed a piece of an estate. I feel that the trustee took advantage of my relative in a declining mental state. I feel there's foul play involved. I don't know exactly what it is. I call Phoenix. What is the start of your problem solving process? What questions are you asking? How do you attack that?
Yeah. So we would start off with that big conversation, take me through um, months, even years before they passed away. When did the mental decline start happening? When did you start noticing stuff may not be right? And if all of that is like, I really just don't know, I don't know anything. We get personal information, take down what they do know of just the physical assets. Where did they live? Were they in a care facility? Were they in their house? What kind of cars did they drive? Where did they bank? And get those just general questions out of the way. And then typically, if it's the side of just not really knowing much of anything, we do kind of the same process that we would for like a judgment or anything like that, of like, let me do an asset search. Let me see what I can find that is currently under his name or just recently left his name or their name. Once that's done, we sit down with the client. It's like, okay, what looks wrong? Because you obviously are going to know more than I ever will looking at this person's information. So what is here? What's missing? And what questions do we need to fill in from there? And that may lead to, on the ground interviews with the trustee, with people who, either accepted, bought any kind of asset from the trustee or anything like that. And then that may lead to actually investigating the trustee, looking into their asset information, their financials. Did they make, pay off credit cards? Did they pay off their mortgage crazily fast? Did they buy a new camper that's worth $100,000 that they don't have? And kind of piecing all of that stuff together. And then usually we can paint a good enough picture that they can then bring in that person, whether it's through deposition or something like that, and ask them, we may not have 100% information that says that they did steal, but we can paint enough of a picture that the attorney can ask them questions. And it's like, you're almost dead to rights. You just need to really come clean at that point.
So this is one of those that happens a lot where there's a need for complex information gathering that is not something you can expect out of the police or an attorney, where what Phoenix is able to do is piece together a puzzle where you're taking the current assets and finding any movement of these assets and collaborating with the client in terms of what they understand about the family and personal dynamics to build a coherent story that may or may not be submitted as evidence in an ensuing case.
Yeah. I mean, not only in probate and estate cases. I mean, this kind of goes hand in hand with any asset case. I mean, we work closely with attorneys. They can do stuff and have access to information that we don't. And then we also have access to information quicker and usually more efficiently than they do. they have the power to subpoena financial records, transactional history, those types of things. But with the amount of financial institutions out there, they need to know where to actually send it and who to send it to. That's where we come in. We may not be able to tell you 100% what's in somebody's bank account. Typically, we can get some idea or the balance as of a day. But the bigger key point is knowing where that person banks. And then did they close a relationship within the last year that the attorney needs to go subpoena to see, okay, did they dump all the money into here? And then to cover their tracks, they close that account, moved to somewhere else that nobody knew about. And so gathering that big list of what institutions are they affiliated with? Where does the attorney actually need to go start poking around? And then we can go back through the physical assets and start doing that same thing.
Okay, so there's very much like a symbiotic strategic relationship between, a firm like PHENIX and estate probate attorneys.
100%. Absolutely.
So a lot of, I would assume, your repeat customers in this area are a roster of probate and estate attorneys that go back to you to find the information that they're not suited for.
Yeah. We have a handful that come back to us on a regular basis. And then we also just have the clients who get directed to go hire an asset investigator or a private investigator from an attorney, and they don't have a direction that they point them in. And then, we are well known enough and do a very good job at what we do enough to where that, we're the popular search. We're, up on everybody's list. And typically when people call us walking through everything, I mean, we just take that extra step to, some investigation companies may not even take your phone call, or it may be like, hey, here's our website, fill out a form and you send me the information and I just don't ever talk to you. So all of that stuff combined, helps us kind of stay on top and be really the choice to go with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously PHENIX has been around for 30 years or so you've done a lot and known for a lot. But I think in terms of nationwide notoriety, asset search is kind of what you're most known for online, it looks like.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate.
So Joel, obviously the most interesting thing to almost anyone is like when there is foul play involved, what do you see most commonly? Like, what are people doing with these estates that they shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, I would say there's probably three more common areas. I mean, obviously the easiest, money. So stealing financials, getting mom, again, mental decline. I control your finances, so I pay your bills, take all of that burden for you. You don't have to worry about it while I sit there and also take your debit card and pay my bills as well. Obviously property, getting somebody to sign over property to somebody else, whether you have sole ownership now and you can sell it. And then the other side would be like businesses. So signing over control of businesses or something like that to child, to trustee, to whoever.
So whatever the asset that is being moved around, it sounds like the main driver of that is convincing an elderly or relative in mental decline to do something that is not advisable.
Yeah.
Is that how it almost always happens?
Yeah. Or, like you said, against their will, the will that is written, because a lot of people will think about it and you may write a will when you're, 40 or 50, kind of, you think about it, you write the will and then you don't think about it. And then, you live for another 25 years and your estate looks completely different. So some people don't think about updating that stuff, or they do update it. And in that 20 years, one of your kids has, pissed you off enough to where you kick them out of the family. And then shortly after that, you pass away and that kid wants to step back in. And it's like, oh no, I was part of the original will and there wasn't a new will. And now I'm going to contest it. And, because people can do that. So you can go to court and contest a current will. With the case of either they signed it when they didn't have the mental capability to know what they were signing or establishing. So yeah, we have that situation that pops up from time to time as well.
So in that scenario, the work that you're able to do to kind of chart out the movement of these assets and the timing around that can be used as corroborating evidence in these cases.
Yeah. So we work cases to where it does get a little touchy, but because if we're working for like the trustee, for example, I mean, they would give us access to like not really medical history, but being able to talk with the nurses that took care of those patients if they were declining medically. It's like interviewing those people. How did they act on a daily basis? Did they have days of clarity versus days that they didn't, were they not clear at any given point in the last month? And it's like, okay, if they say yes to that point, anything that they did in the last month, it probably wasn't, it wasn't them that was doing it, or they didn't understand what they were doing.
What is a typical, obviously estates, depending on who it is, there's a massive range in shapes and sizes of these estates. What is a typical size of an estate that you're called upon to investigate?
Yeah, I mean, most anybody, I mean, even nowadays, I think most states have a threshold to where the estates that are under, I think it's like $100,000 in most states, don't need to go through the probate court, and they can just go through just a normal, quick process, essentially. I would say probably anywhere between that to $250,000 estates. I mean, we work bigger cases than that for sure before. But most people nowadays with the price of real estate, I mean, your house is worth, 150 to 250,000, may have, a chunk in retirement. So, you're talking, maybe up to 300,000, if not a little bit more than that. So, um,
Yeah, I mean, families have certainly been torn apart by much smaller numbers than that.
that's the worst thing. I mean, it still amazes me, no matter how many cases I work like this, of even the tightest knit of family that we talk to, the amount of money that's torn that family apart is crazy. Um, I've had that conversation with my personal family as well of just like, hey, we need to figure this out because I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the person that everybody's pissed off about, because if you follow the estate and somebody's not happy, you're the person that they get to direct their anger at.
No, certainly. And like most of the investigators I speak to, you're just so much more conscious of the worst case scenario than most people because you've seen it play out so many times.
Yeah, it's those conversations are rough, and yeah, I think we've had that conversation on a previous episode too of just managing those emotions, and as good investigators, you have to be able to empathize with that and connect with it, but then you have to also pull yourself back and direct the investigation where it needs to go, because in these types of cases, I mean, the emotions are insane. I've known I've grew up with brother sister. We've been alive together for whatever 60 years, and now I can't think any less of them because they did this. It's like, trying to navigate that conversation, telling them either A, yes, I think that they did do this, or B, like, hey, I see where you think that there should be more assets there, but I really don't see anything that they did wrong. I don't see any movement of their own assets. I don't see bills being paid off. I don't think this happened. I don't know what happened to the estate that you think should be there, but I don't believe your anger needs to be directed in that direction.
Oh, I didn't really consider the scenario where, for example, someone's parents may have projected better financial health than was real, and they didn't get a meaningful inheritance. So they suspected foul play when in reality there was more money shown than was real.
Yeah. I mean, another case scenario. I mean, we get that. I guess I would say a lot as well of yeah, growing up, mom and dad talked about, when they pass away, we're going to get millions. And, you know, sometimes that's true. A lot of times it's not. And it may be just good intentions from parents, stretching the truth, or they run into hard times again in that last 20 years of their life. A lot of times if you get put, into a care facility, people just can't even fathom the amount of money that it takes uh, to run those facilities, and in a good facility. Because I mean, obviously everybody has heard the horror stories about bad care facilities. Those facilities may be six, seven, eight, $10,000 a month, and your
Mhm.
parents have $1 million and they live for a couple of years, I mean, that $1 million doesn't go a whole lot when you're charging 10 grand a month.
No, that number shrinks very, very quickly. I, Joel, I think it's interesting that there's a lot of news around like Gen Z and millennials, struggling in the job market and moving back with their parents, and kind of like pulling what may have been an inheritance, but using it before their parents pass away. I wonder how that's going to play out if one sibling is a beneficiary of draining the inheritance, living with their parents.
It'll probably be rough, especially if that's not disclosed to the rest of the family. I think if it's the favorite child that gets to screw up their entire life, and mom and dad now do that one last thing and then leave nothing for the kids, it'll probably go one way or the other. It'll either be if in that specific case, it's well, I didn't expect anything because I assumed something like this was going to happen. Or the other side, that it's going to get extremely heated, extremely emotional, and that family's just never going to be a family again.
I know that's the unfortunate reality that we've all seen, I'm sure. Joe, I always like to ask, even when I feel like the answer may be sometimes there's no avoiding this, how, if anything, do you see these situations being prevented from? How can we handle these potential blowups before the person passes away, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are steps too. You know, the setting up of a will, having that conversation way before it's needed. I myself, I'm not that old. I'm still in my 30s, but I've had that conversation with my wife. We don't have anything on paper, but it's like, you know, hey, if I get killed tomorrow in a car accident, you're getting everything. I know that there are one or two things that I want to go to my dad or my brother and my sister, but outside of that, it's like you get everything. Just starting those conversations early and understanding even just your partner's wishes, and then having that conversation with parents. Um, One thing, that I have, since I've started this job, starting to recommend everybody is looking into a trust. And if it's strictly just for your property, your mom and dad worked for their entire lives to buy the house that they lived in for 20, 30, 40 years. As simple as putting that into a trust before they pass away helps the probate process just go through so much smoother. Once it's in a trust, it's no longer really part of their estate and it's already listed as a beneficiary. So once they pass, that trust automatically transfers over to that beneficiary. So you don't have the infighting. You don't, that person, whoever owned it, is already directing where that is going. Same thing with bank accounts. Every bank account has a beneficiary. The biggest thing I could probably tell people is really look at who you're gonna trust with your estate. Don't default to my brother or sister, or don't default to the eldest child. I mean, really think about who is responsible, no matter what, even if it's like, Scott, I'm going to give you control of my entire estate. You're not getting anything, but here's what I want to happen. That I know your, what is it, your worth, how you operate as a person, that even getting nothing, you're going to do everything that I wish. And that's probably the biggest thing, is even if that person, or picking that person, even if everybody else is going to hate them, that they're going to do what's right and what you're asking of them. And that's hard. That's hard for a lot of people to either pass over somebody that's really close to them, having that conversation to put that weight onto somebody. But picking the right person to handle your estate is probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah, I think a lot of this advice, unfortunately, goes back to being a good judge of character, making tough decisions, and communicating effectively.
Yeah,
Having
100%.
hard conversations. Yeah, that's tough. Joel, before we get past this, an analogy I've heard of a trust is kind of like think of it as a safe where you can assign different money, homes, assets, and then you sign that trust over to a specific person. Like before you die, you're pre-packaging it in a more rigid way. Is that what a trust is, or what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people have the initial thought that when trusts come up is that's what bad people do to get away with funneling money in and around or avoiding IRS or something like that. Um, I mean, people use trust in that way, but they definitely use it to shield assets away from them. Very simple terms. I mean, think of a trust as a business that doesn't do business, right? It's tied to your social. So there's two main trusts that you can open up: a revocable trust, which is you can, as the owner of it, I can move property in, I can take property out, I can put a bank account in there underneath the trust name, I can take it out. Or the irrevocable trust, which, usually comes in when people just have a massive estate and it's like, I'm not going to deal with this property, I'm not going to deal with this thing for the rest of my life, no matter what, and it's only going to go to this person or go here. Or setting up for donations. After you pass away, a lot of people will set up, hey, I want $100,000 of my estate to go to this foundation or something like that. And so you put it into a irrevocable trust, and even you can't do anything. So even if you're alive and you're like, shit, I ran into bad times, and it'd be nice to grab that $100,000. You can no longer touch that. You've already set that aside. But it is essentially a business outside of yourself that you still can control. And then once you pass away, that becomes an entity in itself. And then you've already directed, like you said, who that stuff goes to.
So practically speaking, a trust is an additional legal step to take past a will.
Yes. Yeah. And it also helps you, like I said, go through the probate process quicker. So, when you pass away, you do have to alert any debtors or any creditors out there. Hey, this person's passed away. Do they still owe you money? Anything like that. And that money does get paid back through out of the estate. And then, so if you are putting property into a trust like that, it helps you kind of skip some of those steps through that probate process. Since that asset's already spoken for, if you don't have a mortgage on it or anything like that, it's already directed to somebody else. And once you pass away, that trust becomes its own thing and it already moves over to that other person. So it's no longer your property.
I'm almost sure this is the last dictionary time with Joel for this podcast, but probate has a negative connotation, I believe is a word, and I understand that it can be a grind that can last for months and years. Can you explain in simple terms what probate is and why it has a negative connotation?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the worst part about it. With anything in our legal system, we have so many people in the country, it just takes forever to get through the legal system. And they do have a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. So if you aren't prepared and you pass away, your mom and dad pass away, whatever the case may be, and there's just nothing set up, like everything's up for grabs. So again, any debt that they hold, every creditor, you have to give them the chance or the opportunity to come forward to say, hey, that person owed me money. And then again, that stuff gets paid out through the estate, and then you get what's left over, essentially. By going through the proper steps, going through these steps to mitigate that process, you're already directing some of your assets to go to somebody else, which helps that number come down. So it's no longer now I have a $500,000 estate because my property, my vehicle, my bank account, and everything else is already in somebody else's name. The second I pass away, that drops down to maybe underneath that $100,000 threshold of going through probate.
Joel, it's interesting. Obviously, like I'm talking to a much more knowledgeable person right now. And as you're saying this, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, me not taking the steps to do a will and a trust is creating what looks like a very predictable burden for my family when unfortunately I pass away. Is there something I'm missing to where a responsible person with meaningful assets should take that step to go do this trust?
I mean, the trust, I think so. I mean, if you own a property, and I mean, that's just a very simple way to make that process easy. To set up the trust, if you know who it's going to go through. And like I said, if you set up a revocable trust, if that person, whoever that beneficiary is, God forbid they pass away, before you do or something like that, you can change those aspects of that. And then just setting up a will and directing everything, even if it's like, hey, if I pass away, my wife gets everything. like, and then she can do with whatever she wants in that regard once you're gone. That's fine. But I mean, just having even those simple steps set up, having the conversation, taking those one or two steps makes everything so much better and easier on your family.
Yeah, I mean, boy, you've done a really good job making a pretty clear case to spend time when you're alive and coherent, sort of painting a better picture and taking some additional steps. Um, so usually I like to wrap these up with the same thing every time. It might be a good why it's so important to take these steps, have the hard conversations, assess who you can trust, contact attorneys to go through all of that to avoid this potential big blow up. What is the messiest, biggest, wildest estate asset search that you've seen or worked that made you just go, oh, damn, I feel bad for this family?
Yeah, I mean, I've well, biggest and messiest is can go two different ways. I mean, I've seen very small estates just completely eviscerate a family. Family fighting over a couple of thousands of dollars that they throw 60 years away um, because somebody got $1,000 more than me. Those probably hurt my heart worse than, a very large amount of money, life-changing money in people's eyes. Granted, it still hurts to see people go after their own family for any amount of money, but it's like that would change your life versus this is nothing. Like, I mean, it's legitimately nothing. $1,000 doesn't go hardly anywhere anymore
Mm-hmm.
in our country. So it's like you're throwing away your entire family for that. So I've worked kind of both sides of those spectrums, very large, very small. And, the worst part from both of those is the unknown and the opportunity for somebody to make up a story in their head. I remember dad told me this. It was never written down. It was never told to anybody else. And you take that one little thing that you remember, even if it's not correct, and you run with it and you just create this entire problem that may or shouldn't even have been a problem if they would have took the steps beforehand to say, sit down and have that conversation with your kids of like, hey, this is what I've got. This is where I'm dividing it. And I don't want you guys to hate each other over it.
Boy, it's interesting, Joel, because just like stepping out of the professional world we live in, I think a lot of these families probably feel like there's this time bomb that will go off, but diffusing it is awkward.
Yeah.
So they just let it go until they pass, and then the bomb goes off in their wake.
Yeah, I mean, nobody likes to think about death or losing their mom or dad or, grandma or grandpa or anything like that. But, again, having that good communication, having the ability to go up to your mom and dad and say, "Hey, this sucks. I know you don't want to think about it, but I also don't want the burden of it tearing our family apart not having this conversation." And that can be as early as, when your kids are in their 20s or 30s and then you're in your now 50s or 60s. Again, you still may have 20 to 40 years to live, but you may not either. And having that conversation now, when, like you said earlier, you're sane of mind, you're thinking straight, you know where you want your stuff to go, like it's the best time.
Joel, seems like the work you've done and the experiences you've had have made you a wise old man in your 30s.
It's definitely made me think of a lot more stuff that I never would have, for sure.
Joel, this was a really good episode, I think, in terms of like setting the foundation for what all of this is. And I know you're an expert in this world, so it might not have felt as informative as it was for a layperson like myself. And I know a few of these topics we could have an episode in and of itself. So appreciate you informing, opening the dictionary of your brain to me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking forward to continuing the conversation next time.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Joel.
Have a good day, guys.
See ya.